Welcome to the Project Management Happy Hour. Our aim is to share frank and honest discussion about real-world issues in project management, but do it in a way that's not too dry, though it might get a bit salty sometimes.
Welcome to the show, Evan.
Thank you, Kate and Kim, for having me.
We're really happy to have you on. But before we jump in, I've got one question we'd love to ask is what is the most valuable business lesson that you had to learn the hard way?
Well, the hard way, I think about that. When I left Merck, my first company I worked for, I started consulting and I was a subcontractor on another client's training program. And I didn't realize, right, and really understand my job was to serve them. And I got myself, it's probably the only thing I got fired from in my life, in that I thought I knew things that I could help their client with rather than just delivering the content they delivered. And I got myself in big trouble. So I think the biggest learning for me is you're always in service to whoever the sponsor is for any initiative. And I learned that the hard way. It was painful. I was over in Europe. They fired me from the next program. And so that stands out as one thing.
So know who your boss is.
Yes, exactly. You know who's covering your paychecks, so to speak.
Yes, I had to learn that lesson. I'm sure none of our listeners are surprised that I thought I was a little smarty pants who knew better than everybody earlier in my career. What has changed? I have a podcast. I think it's the same thing. So, have I learned my lesson? Maybe never.
Maybe a few lifetimes from now, depending on what you believe, Kate.
Yes. I look forward to several more lifetimes of being a know-it-all. Incredible. Well, Evan reached out to me on LinkedIn and I looked you up. We share a love of facilitation in meetings. I guess what I want to say clearly is that I love meetings. I think it's an unpopular opinion, but my meetings are productive. And my meetings, we come together because there's a reason to chat. We have a list of things we've decided on. We move forward at the end of it. But because I'm not in meetings I don't know what meetings that are bad are like, because I also take over bad meetings because I can't have a bad meeting. I'm like, if I'm going to leave, if this isn't helpful, which I don't say that spicily, but since you also kind of can't leave, I go, so what are we doing here? And what was the outcome? Who do we need to talk to? So I end up at all so it's for me, I've gotten feedback my whole career that meetings are better when I'm there because I have this attitude. But I think you're most meetings shouldn't exist. Tell me how you feel about meetings now that you've heard my love letter to meetings.
Well, it's interesting, Kate. Early in my career, I was doing cultural change consulting. And one of the first things we would do with a senior team is figure out how to rip out the bureaucracy. That's the low-hanging fruit, how to get rid of unnecessary policies, unnecessary reports, unnecessary approval levels, and unnecessary meetings. And frankly, so many meetings are unnecessary. Now, for 33 years, I've asked two questions of clients. One, how many meetings are going to take place in your organization today? And you work for PayPal, right? Maybe that was your last job.
Last big gig, yeah.
And there's 24,000 people, and you're going to do the math, right? Well, 24,000 people, how many meetings on average were in the same meeting? I wouldn't be surprised when we think of the one-on-ones. They may have at least 20,000, if not more meetings in a single day. Now, the question I've asked clients, and you're not in these meetings, it sounds like, Kate.
I'm not.
What's the average effectiveness of a typical meeting you attend on a scale of 0 to 100%? And I would say almost every time, people say less than 50%. And I say, let's do a little math together, right? The more senior you are, the more time you're going to spend in meetings. And if you're spending 50% of your time in meetings, you're literally going to spend a year's worth of your life in hours in meetings. And under a decade, how organizations tolerate this, I have no idea. It is the fundamental productivity loss organizations don't address. You're not someone who tolerates that. And you shouldn't tolerate it.
Nobody should. Nobody should tolerate bad meetings. I'm huge on giving time back. I am huge on checking in on what the purpose of the meeting is in the first place, and I do find there are, and we don't have to super dive into this, but I do find there's some organizations where there's like, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy where they're so full of meetings, nobody can do any work not in the meeting. So then you have to book the meeting to do the work so that the work can get done. Like I mean, that's real.
Oh,
I have a
yeah.
client right now where, I gave them homework in between the sessions of the training course I'm teaching. Nobody ever did the homework because they did not have time to do it. So on my second session with this company, I made the sessions longer so that we wouldn't have to do homework in between and we could do it in the meeting, because that's the only way that they have time in their day. So I'm with you. Like, there's a lot of meetings happening, and then folks are like, when do I do my work? And it's like, well, if all of your meetings don't lead to productive outcomes, then perhaps have less of those so you can do your productive work.
I've got a couple of friends who work at a very large IT integrator doing professional services. They're in mid-management roles, and they've shared their frustration. They spend 6 hours a week in meetings reviewing and rehashing their forecast.
That's a lot of time on a forecast.
Just for reviewing over and over. Yeah, it's just, wow, what a productivity killer.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is the fundamental productivity loss for organizations. And really, for us, when we teach people about meetings, it's really a leadership style for high stakes meetings. Because the type of meetings that should be happening are meetings with, to your point, a legitimate purpose and a legitimate set of objectives or outcomes. So we're talking about collaborative meetings, strategic planning sessions, project chartering meetings, Kaizen events, like real complex collaborative meetings where we're getting real business outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
So many meetings, I would invite people to consider and ask the question, do I really need a meeting for this? Right? Do I really need a meeting for this? And the answer often is no. But there are certain meetings that need to happen, and those are the ones we focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the meetings you focus on are, what I took away was strategic. So this is where like a collaborative decision needs to be come to, or like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, have you ever read Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of Teams by chance?
Of course, yeah.
Right. I mean, I love his thinking because it's simple. Anyone can understand it. His first book, Death by Meeting, I don't know that's a great book to read, but there's a great quote in there. When we run bad meetings, it almost always leads to bad decisions, which is a recipe for performance mediocrity, a recipe for productivity loss, a recipe, frankly, for morale cratering. Because if I have to be in all the meetings you're describing that are wasting my time, I can't get my job done. Now, it's a recipe for something else if I'm the one running those bad meetings. It's a recipe for people seeing me as a bad leader.
Yes.
Because I'm wasting their time.
Yes.
Right? And so that's where my reputation is being formed. And so this is really a style of leadership, not of course in meetings, but the meetings we're focusing on are the strategic high stakes decision-making meetings.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So if someone, not me, I mean, just somebody hypothetically were to look at their calendar and it looks like the loser in the quilt competition at the state fair, right? I'm getting that. There's weird blocks of colors everywhere, top to bottom. None of them lines up. So for somebody like that were to look at their calendar and go, I can't get anything done because of all this stuff. Do you have any tips? Like, how would somebody like that go through their calendar and say, no, we're not doing this. We're going to have a call instead, or I'm going to Slack them, or what? Are there any kind of rules of thumb or math or deciding questions? How would somebody like that, not me, somebody like that go through that?
Well, there are deciding questions, right? Kate, you were using some of the questions, right? We teach a very simple model called the POPR model. It's an acronym, right? Keep everything simple. The P is the purpose. The O is the objectives. The second P is the process. The R are the roles. And the A are the agreements, how we need to interact. So the first heuristic I would use is if the person calling the meeting can't tell you why you're having a meeting, what they're trying to get done, show you an agenda, which is the process, and tell you what your role is there, don't go to their meeting. Now, there's realpolitik. If it's your boss's boss, like a very senior person, you have to go, right? Where it's like you can't tell your boss's boss, I'm not going. But so many people go to meetings for, what do they use the term? FOMO, fear of missing out. They're worried something major is going to happen there. So they often, they're part of the problem. It's like, why do you accept these meetings that people can't tell you why they're having the meeting, what you're doing, how you should do it, and what your role is? And that's on you to some degree.
Yeah. I mean, Kim, you were the one who gave me the line, if you don't own your calendar, you don't own your life.
Yeah.
That's a real one in meetings. Like, approach to your schedule at work. Don't put things on calendars that don't need to be there. Don't waste people's time. Don't waste your own time by going to things that aren't good. And I do think I'm going to go with acceptable work policy. It's a little bit spicy, but I do think it's acceptable work policy to say, hey, I noticed that there wasn't an agenda or wasn't clear what you needed from me in this meeting. So I'm canceling this for now. If you need me, just let me know. Which can be I don't think it's passive aggressive. We'll go with subtle way of saying, hey, if you want me at your meeting, you have to tell me why I'm going so I can be an active, collaborative participant. Otherwise, I will not go to your meeting. And that's a way to handle that at work.
And this is why we would intervene at the level of the meeting when we were doing cultural transformation, is that's where we're going to spend all our time. And I want a culture where everything's value add, right? Where we're not wasting time. So if you have the habit of POPRA, if you will, but there's so many different ways to think about it, but not going to meetings without purpose and objectives, right? You're going to change the culture of the organization. You're going to free up time.
Yes.
And when I have meetings, we're going to get stuff done.
Yeah.
Right. And people, they don't hate meetings, right? What they hate is wasting time, right? They don't hate meetings. They just hate wasting time. And so many meetings are just a waste of time.
I had and have had such a reputation in my career that if I call a meeting, people know that it's worth going to. Like, even when when things have been rough and I haven't put an agenda in, at least 90% of I would say 90% of my meeting invites, probably before I went independent, had a really robust agenda because I was telling my other coworkers what to do. At this point with what I'm doing, it's like, here's this meeting. And we already talked about it. We're communicating via email what's going on. So it might not actually be in the invite, but because they're either paying for my time because I've already put it in a scope document, right? They know why we're coming together. But I had a whole reputation for so I to go to meetings Kate puts on the calendar. It's worth it. Kate won't waste your time.
Well, that's where your reputation as a leader is being formed. If you're out doing coding or something on your computer, no one's seeing what you're doing. When I take your time, that's where my reputation's being formed. So a meeting is a leadership moment, a fundamental leadership moment. If I make good use of people's time, they're going to be like, Kate's a great leader. I want to be at her meeting. She gets stuff done. If I waste their time and I'm doing that over and over, this is a leadership issue.
Yeah.
Right. And because people are like, I don't want to go to this person's meeting. I got better things to do.
And the other thing too, though, that I think is interesting, right? If that employee that you're working with, your coworker, if most of their value is out of the skill they do by themselves, like coding, right, or on their own team, you know what I mean? It's not just a leadership moment for me, but if I'm also not providing that person an opportunity to have leadership in front of their peers, in front of a cross-functional group, that is another decision that those folks that you're inviting to your meeting are making. If I take you into a meeting and we agree on the whole project plan because that's, what it is that we're doing, or the charter or whatever it is. And then we're like, cool, we know exactly what we're doing. Everybody can go off and I won't bother you anymore because we now have schedules and dates for when things are due. So no more meetings necessary until it's time to collaborate or have a decision. If they don't have an opportunity to shine, they're not going to want to participate either, which is, I think, another way to interpret that. It's not just my leadership, it's theirs as well.
I mean, I think great leaders build other leaders, right? That really is what I think leadership is realizing we need leadership up and down an organization. My mentor always taught me that I think he wrote a book called The Leadership Engine, which is that's what great leaders are doing, is building a culture where we're building better and better leaders at all level. And so I would completely agree with that. And where I'm modeling the leadership is in meetings.
Yes.
Right? When I'm taking time, that's where they see what good looks like and bad looks like. And I don't want to be on the side of modeling bad for people.
Yes, absolutely. I just had a conversation about that this morning. So yes, Evan, you and I are cut from the same cloth, obviously. we're like, if we're going to get together, we want it to be, my words, fun, your words, productive. I think getting things done is fun.
Meetings should be fun, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're transacting things that are meaningful to our bigger mission for the organization. And when we deliver value, it's fun. When our clients are happy, it's fun. Right. And if you know how to design meetings well, they're certainly more energizing, whereas so many meetings are de-energizing.
Yes.
Right? And I think the pandemic also, the calendar went forever because all of a sudden people are like, we can have meetings at night. All right. So it's like all of a sudden, I'm having meetings from 6 a.m. if I'm on an international team till who knows how late.
Yeah.
And, it's not sustainable, frankly. It's a cultural issue
Yeah.
that needs to be addressed.
Yes. Gosh, I love it. We're meetings dorks. This is so fun. It's great. I say dorks affectionately. I'm so sorry. But I no, very few people are like, I love a meeting, so it's just nice to meet somebody else who appreciates.
Well, what I tell people, though, keep in mind the bar is very low, right? People are not good at this. So if you just take a few fundamentals,
You're
if you
right.
just take a few fundamentals and do them better, people are like, wow, I don't know what Kate did, but I want to go to her meeting again. So the bar is so darn low. People always tell me on average effectiveness meetings are 30, 40, 50% effective. It's a target-rich environment to
True.
distinguish yourself as this person knows how to get stuff done.
Yeah. Just being able to end a meeting by saying cool, we can't good talk, came to these decisions. These are the next steps. I won't have to bug you until next future time. Hugely productive. I love it. But we invited you on today because we could just keep going nonstop on this. Because in order to have a productive meeting, sometimes we get interrupted by super... Gosh, it's like daylight savings was 2 days ago. And so my brain is not functioning perfectly. And so I'm like, sometimes we get interrupted by super annoying, powerful people in the room. And that's not what you say out loud, but it's what you think in your heart whenever you go, why are you speaking in my meeting? And so those folks are the HIPPOs of the room, the highest paid person's opinion, if you haven't heard that acronym before for our listeners. And I wanted to talk about that with you, because that one of the biggest things that could get in the way of a productive meeting. You might come in, you've got your agenda. You're like, I listen to PM Happy Hour. I have an agenda. We've got several episodes on meetings. You're like, I did my 30-minute executive meeting. I did how to tell people what to do. I did stage direction in the boardroom. I'm ready. And you come in prepared, and then there is a person who is just bogarting the floor, which today is going to be me because I can't shut up. And so Kim's not allowed to talk at this meeting because I have so many things I want to say. It's my meeting now. What do you do when you have a Kate who won't shut up and right now I get to be the highest paid person. I'm making $5 more than all of you. So I'm the most important person in the room. What are some tactics we could take away here? Help us out whenever we got a big Kate that barges in and won't be quiet.
Well, I think I have to back up slightly, right? Because in a high stakes meeting, the work is what we did before we show up.
Mm-hmm.
There are alignment issues, and the HIPPO, right, was an agile term. I think someone from Microsoft developed it a long time ago. The metaphor we might use, right, for a high stakes meeting, right, or a project, or a consulting engagement, or a continuous improvement initiative is the metaphor of a plane flight, right? I'm in Denver. Right. And you're in San Diego, right, Kim? You're in Phoenix. If I'm coming to visit you, 3 parts to that flight, metaphorically. Takeoff, which doesn't take a lot of time. I was just at time at every time from the time they hit the jets to wheels up is usually about 35 to 42 seconds. If it doesn't go well, we're all dead, metaphorically. It's the same things on our projects, right? And so one of the challenges I face is I don't get alignment with the HIPPO before the meeting and get clear. Why do you want to have the meeting? What does success look like to you? What are you trying to get done? Yet we'll have the meeting completely misaligned with the HIPPO, which means we're in trouble right from the get-go. Now, It is my job, based on that, to design the process or the agenda for the meeting. They don't need to design that. And so the first trap we get into is we have meetings and we're totally misaligned of what's happening. Now, once the HIPPO shows up, okay, ideally, if they're aligned, I'm going to get a lot less of that behavior. And I always say to people, well, look, it's unfortunate people do show up at your meetings because it'd be so much easier to get done what you wanted to get done if there were no people.
Yeah.
But as we go with the HIPPOs, right, we have to think about, it could often be a middle-aged white guy like me, senior vice president, right? Fiery red driving styles, ENTJ and Myers-Briggs. Strong opinions, likes to impose his will on the group. And so part of the art of this style of leadership is understanding how to hold space to bring in the junior people, the people of color, the people speaking English as a second, third language. And that's the real art, is knowing how to bring in other voices to help the HIPPO, because they may be the ultimate decision, make the best decision. And we can get into some of the tactical things, but I have to frame leadership a little bit to get to that.
That's so interesting because in some of my coaching with more senior leaders, and this is true for a lot of people in their career, right? They were a very high performing individual contributor. And every person who's been promoted into a leadership role is in their own journey of letting go of, I am still the individual contributor. And like, it's not like you get promoted to a leadership role and you magically understand the leadership that you now need to step into. That's a journey as you continue your growth. And so sometimes I would say then, based off what you just said, is some hippos are like, right, because this is what we're going to do, because that's how I would do it. And no one else is speaking right now. So I'll speak to help move us all forward with my highest paid person's opinion, where I'm not even intentionally trying to send things either off the rails or prevent folks from talking. I just don't know how to do it any differently.
One of the most powerful, simple ways to think about our leadership is on a continuum, where on one extreme, I could run a high stakes meeting. Let's just take the example of we're trying to decide what's in and out of the next year's budget, right?
Totally.
Where I'm the expert, right? And to your point, Kate, we're paid as subject matter experts early in our career, right? We develop coding expertise. If I'm a doctor, I get medical expertise. If I'm a lawyer, I have legal expertise. Now, when I'm asked to start leading other experts, I'm driven to the other side of the continuum. The other extreme is I could lead a group and remain completely neutral. Even though I have strong opinions, what should be in and out of next year's budget, I never tell the people what the budget should be, right? But I'm an expert in getting other experts to collaborate, an expert in process facilitation. That's what we're teaching. And so what we always encourage the person leading the group is to always ask questions first before going to tell. Now, if I'm the HIPPO and I'm running the meeting and I start telling people my expertise, I suppress conversation. And so really it's the art of understanding where we should enter our leadership is on the side of the continuum where we ask questions, remain neutral, pull in thinking from everyone. And that means we need to know how to just delicately, and it's political, right? Keep the HIPPO at bay long enough so I've helped them hear what they need to hear to make a better decision. Because if the HIPPO starts the conversation, no one's going to say anything, given certain styles of leadership. There are some HIPPOs that are really good at remaining neutral and coming in at the end rather than the beginning.
I'm going to practice asking questions and not being a big hippo and giving Kim, who I've seen be so eager to chime in several times. Kim, what are you thinking? What are your thoughts? What comes up for you, Kim?
I think and I felt that's a hard transition, right? Because a lot of the value that your safety blanket, right? Your confidence in your ability to do your job for so many years, maybe decades of your career, are wrapped up in your ability to be an expert and to let that go. I think a lot of us, when you start to get to that level in your career, you really realize how hard it is to do that. But it's absolutely essential.
Yeah, and project managers, they are process experts, right? They're bringing other experts together, but they are an expert in how to run a project, right? Which is the process for running the project. Now, that POPRA model, which we talked about earlier, could be applied to chartering a team. Part of my job is to help the team get aligned. Why are we even having the team? What's the purpose? What's the vision of success look like? What's in scope? What's out of scope? All the high-level context around the purpose. The project deliverables are the objectives. And again, call it outcomes, deliverables, goals, makes no difference, right? The project plan is the high-level process for how we're going to execute the project. And then I have roles. What's my role as the project manager? What's the sponsor's role? What's the SME's role? If I have vendors, what's the vendor's role? If I have customers, what's their role? And then I have operating agreements, right? And so part of what a good project manager does is knowing how to remain neutral. And now we're not saying you can't offer your expertise to a group. You absolutely can. It's just the more artful style leadership is drawing the expertise out of the group first and then inserting yourself when the group doesn't have the expertise to do it for themselves or they're about to make a decision. If you go upstairs and tell, the VP, they're going to freak out. Be like, how could you let this team make that decision? All right. But generally, you want to always operate from the ask neutral side to start but then go in the middle when, you got to help the group, and people leading projects have expertise to bear. But that's really their role, is to be process facilitators in many ways.
So what would you say is a neutral question to ask, right? If we have a HIPPO who's come in and they're saying, well, this, we're trying to facilitate, let's say we're trying to facilitate agreement on scope. And they're saying the most important thing is that we do it this way. It's got to be done with this tool, right? They got a lot of opinions on it. But because you've talked with the rest of the project team, that you either need to do discovery or proof of concepts on these tools, or that there's a different tool than what the HIPPO wants to implement. So how would you approach them with a neutral question when they've got such a strong opinion and the rest of your team isn't chiming in because they don't feel they got space? What could you do?
Well, there's another simple acronym we use called the area model, which is, first off, people are attached to their own ideas. So we always have to start with the first A is acknowledge a person's right to a point of view. You're right, that is an important tool.
This is so cute. I've been talking about affirm caution query for my own acronym, and this is going to be your version of that. I can't wait. You're acknowledging, I'm affirming, continue.
It's the art of not making people wrong. And we don't want to make HIPPOs wrong because there's career limiting interventions. I mean, let's be honest, they have power and authority over us. So the first thing we want to always do with anyone, whether it's a HIPPO or a person in resistance or not, is acknowledge their right to a point of view. Not that they're right? But they have a right to a point of view. Now, the second part of the acronym, the R, stands for reframing, which means when I reframe, I have to be able to come back to the purpose and or the objective. So if I never got clear on the purpose or objectives, I don't have a tether to bring the attention back to.
Right.
Given what you're saying, can you help us understand how this furthers the objective or how this is related? So I have that tether. Now, the second tether I have, right, that's the first tether, is I have the rest of the group. I have the other experts, right? And part of what I'm trying to do is bring those people in. So a neutral question, your question, sometimes with HIPPOs, it's delicate. I might ask them, given the purpose and objectives, would you be willing to at least stay open and listen to other people's perspectives, even though you're the ultimate decision maker? And it's a very hard question for them to say no to. No, I'm not willing to stay open and listen to other people. So I wouldn't say you box them in. You're in service to them because they just don't realize by imposing your expertise this early, you're suppressing options. You're suppressing good thinking. More importantly, you're not going to make the best decision because you have 3 other people there know more than you do. You're so high up the food chain in the organization. You have no idea what's going on relative to a person on the front line. And so the neutral question we always ask people when we're dealing with resistance, would you be willing to stay open, listen to other people's perspectives, and give it a try? Now, most people are going to say yes. Now, I have the political reality of people may not say anything, right? Because they may still be scared. But then I have to have good tools and techniques for how I allow people to engage. So the area model is always acknowledge, reframe, engage the group is the second E, and then I got to come back to the HIPPO, re-acknowledge them, right? And say to them, what here is helpful to you that you may want to incorporate in whatever decision you want to make. And it's really, again, this is just working the side of the continuum where you remain neutral. I never told the HIPPO, you're wrong. I never told the HIPPO, this is the right way to do this. But I've helped them be informed, even if they're the ultimate decision maker. And that's what great leadership is.
I do like the leading question. Are you willing to be open-minded? That's a real key phrase to somebody who feels very embedded in their perspective. And it's tough when you're having a conversation and somebody they get set in a position, it's really hard to budge them. And so any kind of prompt that helps them maybe be open-minded or at least acknowledge the idea of being open-minded can be powerful.
Yeah, I may not say be open-minded as much as would you be willing to stay open and to listen to other perspectives, which is underneath saying be open-minded without coming and saying you're not open-minded, which could be career limiting.
Yeah, one of my go-to phrases for my entire career has been, would you be open to trying this, right? Because I think the thing about asking, would you be open to try it? Or would you be open to hearing about our process to, like in the example I gave earlier, like, would you be open to hearing about the plan we have to POC a couple new tools, right? Like, that's a pretty easy yes, no question. And one thing I will say is if a leader has a very strong opinion, or maybe things are really stressful and they can't say clearly, like, I do not have time for guessing games. I know this will work. It is the plan. I don't want to deal with this, right? Like, they won't necessarily say that to you directly. But if you say something like, are we open to hearing the proof of concept plans and which tools we have on the table? And they could say, I'm not. I really appreciate the work that's gone into that. Like, if they're a good leader, right, they could say, I appreciate the work that's gone into this. We're on a really tight deadline to get this done. And I can't afford the budget in the scope or the timeline to try other tools right now. So if you've got, like, unless you have evidence that says that these will be better, faster, or, some other requirement the leader has, right? Like, that's what you give them the opportunity to say whenever you ask, would you consider, would you try?
It's always language of choice. We know adults don't like to be told what to do, and teenagers, if you have teenagers, you can't tell them what to do. So the same continuum applies. But it's very simple. When you look at the trade-offs on the two sides of the continuum, if I decide and tell the group, this is what you're doing, it's a lot quicker, right? Now, I didn't need to listen to the other 10 people on the project team, and I got my way. And there's an advantage to that. Now, as a great leader, what do I want? The best decisions with maximum buy-in and ownership so people actually go implement things. So the trade-off when I decide for the group and tell them what to do, we didn't get the best decision. There was no creativity. We didn't hear points of view that could have helped the HIPPO make the better decision. And people aren't going to buy in, right? Now, it all flips when you're working from the more neutral or process side of the continuum. If you're good at this, and it's a very big if, because people are trained how to present, which is the tell side of the continuum, versus how to facilitate. But if you're good at it and you've invited the right experts, that's a big if. You're not good at it if you have the wrong people there, right? And you're going to get better decisions and you're going to get a ton more buy-in and ownership. Now, people always say, Evan, there's a trade-off, right? Because you know what? It takes longer to ask people. And I chuckle and I say, yes, in the beginning.
It does.
It takes longer because to get 10 people to agree on anything is a minor leadership miracle. We're all dysfunctional human beings. There's politics, there's egos, but it doesn't take long in the long run. You made the right decision from the beginning. There's no rework cycles. You're solving root causes, not symptoms. And the group decided, which means they're much more likely to accelerate the implementation because they think it's the right idea. Now, the HIPPO can make certain decisions. It's just what your job as a good collaborative leader, running that project meeting with the HIPPO, is to help hold space so the HIPPO at least heard from the people who could have helped them make a better decision. Even though they ultimately may go the way they wanted to go in the first place, they may slightly be influenced by the fact that someone said something they did not know. It's just hard because HIPPOs are trained as experts. So they're used to telling people what they think.
Yeah.
And the right question always is, what's the group thing? Because as soon as if I'm leading a meeting, I say, I think, I'm out of neutral, right? Nothing wrong with I think, but I should always ask, what's the group thing before I go to what I think.
Yeah, I like that. It's almost like, so with your POPRA model, it was purpose, objective, process. That's the second P.
Yep.
Yeah. So on that process part of it, sometimes I structure, let's say I've got a particularly grumpy HIPPO who only is able to say the things they don't like about a plan. And maybe also I know they're opinionated and they're going to want to have like one way we go. But to your point on facilitating buy-in from the group, right? Sometimes that leader or that HIPPO has not effectively shared, what their reasoning is and given other people the opportunity to have a discussion around that. You can sometimes leverage process to make sure that you get the right conversation points. So as an example, it could be, we're going to, if we're talking about proof of concept stuff or tool selection, right? We say, we went through tool A. This is what we found. Can we all hear the things we like about tool A? Everybody goes around and says that, and say, and at the beginning of the meeting, you would have said, we're going to hear, 3 different tools we went through. After each tool, we're going to first hear what we liked about each tool, and we're going to go around and give space for that. Then we're going to give what we didn't like about the tool, super high level. You could be more detailed in whatever scenario in. And then we're going to all vote, like anonymously, whatever your process is, go over that. And then we're going to go on to the second tool or whatever it's going to be, right? But you can set up, like, to your point, you're talking about, like, I think your anchors is what you're referencing, or like a point of reference, right? So you've established this in the beginning of the meeting, and then you could say, great, we've heard this first tool. Can we now hear what we like about it? We've seen this first design. What do we like about it? What does the group think? That gives you, the project manager, space to do the ask the group question and also get particular types of responses you're looking for because you've primed them to say those things. And then and if you really needed the good feedback before the bad feedback, then you've promised them they will get a chance to be like, this is stupid, I don't want it. But you're making them participate in the, what are we looking for? What did we like about what we saw?
And that's the second P in the popper is good process structure.
Yeah.
Right. And it's my job when I design a meeting to have good process structure, because it's just like if I let people jump to solutioning.
Yes.
And we haven't spent any time on root causes, we're going to have rework cycles. It's the same principle. It's like, I know we want everyone to hear the advantages before the disadvantages, right? And so that is my job, is to hold the space. And the thing with the HIPPOs, though, is if I surprise them with this stuff in the meeting, stylistically, they may not like asking people. So I have to ask for, this is good consulting skills, getting the popper aligned with them before I get them there. Now, I get it. Sometimes you can't get their calendar, right? And so, but when I do think there's certain meetings, the prep is everything. You can't wing certain meetings because that person's going to blow things up. And if they wanted to make that decision anyway, why'd I have a meeting? Just let them make the decision.
Yeah.
Right. Because then everyone knows in a facilitated meeting when the senior leader, the HIPPOs, made the decision, because no matter what people say, it's always coming back to that person's decision. And so really that's the contracting piece. And that's the real work. The fifth of the 5 core things we teach is good process design and good contracting with the sponsor ahead of time. But at the end of the day, they're going to do weird things. I mean, there's people who blow things up. They don't even realize they're blowing it up.
They don't.
Even if you had the best design in the world, because a lot of senior people don't have tolerance for process, right? They don't understand the importance of process and just like cut to the chase.
I like the idea of asking more questions or getting curious to cite the crucial conversations as part of that process, because so often you're in a meeting and your HIPPO said puts something out, puts a fact, quote unquote fact, or a demand out, and it feels like a natural tendency to everybody just sort of take that number, take that thing, and just try to run with it and try to appease them rather than getting curious. So they say something like, "Oh, you guys should be able to hit 90% billable utilization. I don't know why you can't do that." And so now everybody's scrambling like 90%. Oh my gosh, it's unattainable. What are we going to do? How are we going to do that? And saying, "Oh, well, that's an interesting number. Well, can you tell me, why does that number resound for you? Like, tell me about this number. Why is that important to you? Where do you get that from?" And I just think that's especially for those junior in their career, learning how to be brave enough to ask questions is really important.
Yeah. And I love the word curious, because another way we get asked the HIPPO, a neutral question, is, would you be willing, are you curious?
Yeah.
What some other ways to look at the same issue is, or would that be, you get to decide, right? Because they need to understand. I mean, I'm as controlling as anyone. They want control, but they do want the best decision, right? And so are you curious on the implications of that 90% target? Or are you curious what's in the way of achieving that target? And it's just a lot of senior people just haven't been trained how to be more facilitative, right? And they got promoted because they were the smartest person. If I'm in I work with a lot of pharma companies, they were the smartest scientist.
Yeah.
Right. And they knew everything about biology or microbiology or chemistry. And they kept getting promoted, but they know nothing about group dynamics.
Yeah.
They know nothing about, you want to hold space so people get to weigh in. Even if you want to decide, you want to make the right decision. And if you're the leader of those types of meetings with the HIPPO, you need to know how to hold that space. And, there's a tool. I mean, your listeners, it's the simplest thing to hold space, and it can only be done virtually, right? Although there are ways to do it in face-to-face meetings, but we have the chat feature. Right. And when we're in a room, we know, let's say we have 10 people. It's always 3 or 4 who do 80% of the talking. Right. And 3 or 4 say nothing, even though they should say something. Right. The chat feature allows us to do something to hold space that's very unique if I use it correctly. If I just let people chat whenever they want to chat, the same 3 or 4 people who would have talked in the room do all the chatting. But what we teach people is use your chat at times simultaneously, where you pose a question to the group, but you don't let them hit enter. You make them type their answer. So if the question was, what are the obstacles in the way of achieving this 90% target, right? Now, first I have to ask the HIPPO, would it be helpful for you to have people be honest on this, right? And it's delicate, right? Because of the, but then you make people type their answer in the chat. Don't let them hit enter. Use the hand raise reaction emoji feature, because all of a sudden people are like, oh, other people's hands are up. I got to have something. It creates a tension where people realize they have to participate. It creates space. So the junior people are like, oh, I have time. The introverts need time to think before they speak.
Yes.
Frankly, the extroverts should take time to think before they speak, but it also
Also,
helps
yes.
the extroverts. And then you just put a banner and it says obstacles in the way of 90%. You condition people Pavlovian, hit enter as soon as you see that banner. And all of a sudden it's streaming in. What it gives you as the leader, you see people who aren't doing it, which is important. But it also gives you the space to call on the people first who wouldn't talk. Tell me more about that obstacle. It is so simple. Slow down your chats, right? Make them simultaneous. It will completely change the dynamic of only hearing from the HIPPO, only hearing from the extroverts, only hearing from the ugly Americans when I'm on global teams, right? And that's a tool any of your listeners could do when they're running hybrid meetings. And almost that's all I'm teaching people now is how to run hybrid meetings where we're sitting on screens like we're on, because that's what people are being asked to do on global teams.
Yeah.
There's just a simple tool any of your listeners could do that'll create more space so the HIPPO hears from more perspectives.
I love that. And actually, one thing I do want to highlight that you said earlier, you talked about folks who speak English as a second or third language. And it was only within like the last couple of years of my time in corporate that someone shared with me himself that English was technically his fourth language, which meant that the amount of translation that he was going through in his mind was a lot. So it's very hard for him to keep up in those meetings. And he wants to participate, but he can't always. And he's somebody who'd been promoted and, had a team that he was managing. But I know Americans are very big on like be authentic and share. But like for folks who are on where English is like their fourth language, absolutely there's a culture difference between them and an American. And it's unlikely that somebody would want to raise something that could have them be perceived as not as an effective participant in a meeting. So there's a huge chance that if you have folks with English as a later language that person has learned as part of your team, is that they're going to need all that space to process that. I completely agree on introverts and extroverts as well. But that one was one that I was like, oh man, like if I had to go, like the languages that I know and can speak not fluently, but some in are both Spanish and ASL. But if I had to translate from ASL to English to Spanish, it would take me minutes to respond. That would not be a skill that I'd be able to do very quickly. And usually at that point, the conversation has moved on.
And then you talk about cultural issues. I mean, I've run the program with people from the Pacific Rim, from Japan, South Korea, Thailand, all over the Pacific Rim. So many of those cultures, Japan's a perfect one. Saving face is very important, right? And if their boss is on the line, they may not say a thing. Now, simultaneous chat may not work for everything, but it gives them the best opportunity. And if people start saying, whoa, they actually want to weigh in and I slow it down enough, the people who I want to hear from are those people speaking English as a second language, the introverts, the junior people. And from a diversity standpoint, the people of colors, right? And then we teach other tools, which I'm sure you use. I mean, we use whiteboards, mural. These things are all techniques to do more complex process design, or you could list the advantages, disadvantages. I mean, we all, and people are very sloppy with those because they don't frame well what they're trying to get on their little sticky notes. And they have words like leadership, communicate. What the heck is that? They're not writing smart things. They're not writing specific things. So we teach people, but that's the third of the 5 core things is how to hold space. But anyone listening to this right now, just start doing simultaneous chat. You'll start being able to engage people who would never talk.
I like that. I think that's an incredible suggestion. The one thing I think I do want to kind of, I don't know if it's harp on or take away, what word do I want? I don't know, is Because I think anybody listening right now might be thinking like, well, that might work for your meetings, Evan, Kate, Kim, but it would never work for my meeting. Because, sometimes we're depressed, burnt out, tired baddies who just can't bring ourselves to see a new way of being. And I think the thing I want to iterate here is that it's all like theory until you actually implement something and then consistently implement it. If you did one of the things that we talked about today in all of your meetings going forward, they would all change forever. The shift would not be huge immediately, but if you consistently did this every single time, just picking one thing today, if you did this for all of your meetings for the rest of this month or for the rest of summer, you would see a gigantic difference by the end of summer. And you would also see behavior change from other people in your meetings. They might even ask, can we do a simultaneous chat on this? Because you've set the expectation that that's something that can happen, and they know they can ask for that and that you'll eagerly say yes to it. And that will facilitate the type of culture change you want to see in the team you're working with.
And that's why if we change the culture at the level of the high stakes meeting, where we're going to spend all our time, we begin getting directly at changing the culture of performance at the broader organizational level.
Yeah.
And I only can control as a project manager my meetings.
Right.
Now I can be helpful. Someone like you is going to take over someone else's meeting if it's being run poorly.
I would.
Which a HIPPO will too.
Mm-hmm.
A HIPPO is going to be like, I'm going to take over. Part of it is you haven't done the due diligence to earn even being allowed to have a meeting. Right. But the basic practice I would ask people to do, start your meetings with a clear takeoff. Tell people why they're there and answer questions. Tell people what you're trying to get done and answer questions. You better have an agenda. The roles that aren't explicit enough, who's ultimately deciding? Right. So I got to tell the group what's my role. I'm going to be more neutral. I'm going to guide the conversation. The participants there, the subject matter experts. But often what gets left implicit, who's deciding if we can't reach consensus? Again, I have to talk to my HIPPO ahead of time because there's a lot of HIPPOs. They're like, oh, what do you want to do? They're like, don't put me on the spot. I don't want to make a decision. Right? There's plenty of HIPPOs who are indecisive, and not making a decision is a decision. It means we're going to have another meeting. We're going to have to do work that could have got done here. But the tip is just get your popper. And then the agreements are just the basic things like, use the hand raise reaction emoji.
Totally.
Just the fundamental maintenance. We're all peers. Leave your titles aside. There's tactical ones around mute and video. But another agreement that the group needs to understand before we start flying the plane, that is executing the meeting itself, if we can't reach consensus, what are we going to do? And often it's, if we can't reach consensus, the HIPPO is going to decide, or maybe I as the project manager for a certain item and the ultimate decision maker. But the group needs to understand that before I fly the plane. Now, the third place that we need to have hygiene and discipline on that you're talking about that can be totally transformed is leave time to land the plane, right? People, they jam-pack the agenda with 9 things in a 60-minute meeting that they never were going to get done. And they get to agenda item 7, they were like, oh, we only got 5 minutes left. They start talking faster, right? When what they should be doing, stay with the metaphor of a plane flight, if we're running out of fuel and time is fuel in a meeting, well, when we're running out of fuel in a plane, we're not going to knock on the cockpit door and say, fly faster. We're going to say, find a field to land in. It's the same principle. People just don't leave discipline around. It's over. We only got 7 of the agenda items. Where do we go from here? And you were talking about earlier, the group needs to be crystal clear, right? What was decided and where do we go from here? Who's going to do what by when? That has to happen in the meeting. That's my accountability document. And if I really want to build performance, when I close the meeting, I want to do continuous improvement, which what worked well, that we want to keep doing in our future project team meetings, and what do we need to do differently? So they're starting to build continuous improvement at the meeting level. But that's the fourth of the 5 core things we teach, leave time to land. And the trap is we just keep flying the plane.
Yeah, that one's hard.
Oh, it is. But it's just discipline.
Yeah.
Just realizing I can't let these people escape this meeting unclear where we go from here. And that's what the participant wants. They want to keep asking questions. Let's talk through this next thing. And they know I got a 3 o'clock, I'm out of here. Eject, leaving the Microsoft Teams meeting, and you get left holding the bag as the project manager. So you pay for it by not closing the meeting because your name implicitly is up there for all the tasks that I should have been delegating to people on the team, but I didn't leave time for it. It's just a discipline.
Yeah. I think some of that comes from, right? The discipline, though, that I think that you're talking about is, right, you can have your agenda, but if you put, I had to do math, can't do it in my head, so I brought up my calculator. If they put 9 things on the agenda, audience, I just want you to know, 9 things on agenda is 6.66 minutes per item. This does not include, but if you think about that in terms of time, this does not include reading the agenda, going over the agreements, what the objective is today, and then leaving time to land the plane. So if that would take a minimum of 10 minutes of the meeting, either like a minimum of 10, which could be 5 beginning and end, but even that is generous. It's still ambitious.
Especially with a brand new group where they're meeting for the first time. When have been meeting, my popper could be a minute because they already know why we're here, what we're doing. But early on, it's like, I need to leave time for takeoff. Landing, I always want to leave time for.
Right.
Popper can scale down and it can be much quicker as I work with a team over time.
But if you're doing this to start, like a minimum of 10, I mean, I would put 10 minutes beginning, 10 minutes at the end. It is better to end early than to run over. And so right then if we did have 10 minutes beginning, 10 minutes at the end, right now, oh my gosh, we're at 40 minutes. Oh my gosh, right? We got 40 minutes for 9 items. Now we got 4.44 minutes per agenda item, which is just not possible. It's not possible to give so we're going to talk about the tool. Here's the tool I reviewed. You can't, and then, I don't like the tool. I do like the tool. That can't happen in 4 minutes per thing. That's just not possible. So one of my big, because I love meetings, I have a gut feel on how long things take. And I'll be like, even for this podcast, my favorite one to talk about was whenever we had the Ironman person on, and Kim was so excited because he's always wanted to talk to an Ironman person about how to set up a race. And Kim must have had like 45 questions for this person. And I was like, Kim, we only got a 45-minute episode. We can't ask 45 questions. And I know you're excited and I don't want to, but like, what are the most important questions, Kim? Because we're going to geek out. So we got to cut it down,
We could have recorded for 2 hours and just used 45 minutes on the podcast. I'm just going to put that out there that we could have.
You're right. We could have asked this very nice person who just gave us his time for free to just spend 2 whole hours with us. Like,
that's right.
We let our editor do the heavy lifting and you got to ask all your questions.
Right.
But it's interesting, right? Because there's another simple tip for your listeners. Don't put so many things on the agenda, because if you have too many things, there's no time for conversation.
No time.
You're going to be telling. Right? So you're never going to get any pushback on conversation. But the other thing is we have all these status update meetings. Let's say we have 9 agenda items, and agenda item 1 goes 4 minutes late, and agenda item 2 goes 3 minutes late. Agenda item 3 goes 5 minutes late. And the next thing we know, we're doing the math. I don't have time for agenda item 6, 7, 8, 9. Here's another tip, especially when it's presentations. Use your timer. Literally have the timer going. And the working agreement is, you got to finish your presentation on time. We're leaving 2 minutes for Q&A. We're moving on. But use the timer to just bring people's attention to be more mindful on time. When the presenter sees the clock, they're like, I got to skip this thing. But even in a conversation where I can time box the conversation, because people will go forever on things. It's like,
forever.
Okay, let's time box 5 minutes. We're going to talk about this tool. Wherever we're at the end of this, we're going to turn, if we can't reach consensus, we're going to turn to the HIPPO, and the HIPPO can decide based on the input. But people don't time box things enough. And if you just get the discipline of having that clock, people will find it annoying at first.
Yes.
But all of a sudden, talking about habits, people are like, you got to be on time. Got to be on time.
Got to be on time.
Time is an agreement. Literally, time is an agreement. I'm running those status update meetings with so many different agenda. It's like the agreement is we're not going on time. We're going to leave 2 minutes. We're going to wrap up that mini meeting, if you will. We're going to capture next steps, and we're going to the next meeting.
Yep.
Right. And so that's just another simple thing I can do on virtual meetings, which would be harder face to face, where someone has to be holding up the clock or cutting off the person.
I mean, what I would be doing in face-to-face meetings would either be one gigantic, in my house, I've got like a sand timer. So you could flip it over. It's big. Everybody can see it on the table. That one goes for like 9 minutes though. So that would have to be very situational. The other thing I do though is, ask your, I could turn on all of your personal assistants by saying, Siri, set a timer for 5 minutes. Sorry, friends. But if you do that, you'll have the alarm go off in the room to help you keep time. And if you want to have some time for 4 minutes, what you should do is say, Siri, set a timer for 4 minutes. And then that's your 1 minute warning, and you reset it for 1 minute at the end. So that you're giving them some grace and integrity to wrap up within that time. And because even comedians, public speakers, they get 1 minute warnings too. It's not like people just know time. So like everybody who performs or does something gets a 1 minute, 5 minute, warning in their professional spaces who play with time in a presentation space for a living.
Yeah, and in these hybrid meetings, it's so easy because there's time, there's clocks built in on everything, and
Yep.
and you're doing service to the presenter if it is a presenter, because it's hard to stay on time. And if they're like, oh, okay, I'm skipping these slides, and they're getting better at presenting because they're realizing,
Yes.
you got to manage time when you're presenting, and then you can time box the Q&A, right? But I can't let the Q&A go forever either. It's like, all right, chat the rest of your questions. Copilot will put those in the summary. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, some of my clients are using AI, some aren't at this point. But, I don't know, Kim, how far you go back, but we used to have an administrative assistant sitting in every meeting, typing the minutes, right? That day has changed. I mean, you got Copilot. Now, when I land the plane, you still have to close out what Copilot captured because you have no idea what hallucinations it captures. So you still have to
Agreed.
explicitly say, all right, is this the action plan?
Agreed. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Some of them have even started summarizing before the meeting is over, which I actually think is much better than waiting to get the meeting summary at the end, because I'm not always using those, because I was like, why bother? It's wrong half the time and I'm very good at this. So it's hard to go to worse. I'm currently not saving any time by using the AI. When AI is as good at managing meetings as I am, I will use the AI for meeting minutes. But until then, it's not that good. Even when you tell it, you're like, do it. It doesn't even, yeah. So, but it's because I'm a pro at this. Lots of people, it's very helpful for them. Okay, so we land the plane at the end. Is there another part of the process that we haven't captured with the meeting?
No, I don't think. The 5 core things are take off, Popra, right? Good process space, simultaneous chat using tools like Miro, the area model, which is how I intervene with people, and landing the plane. And then the 5th of the 5 core things is the pre-work, the work you do for alignment. So that we've covered pretty much everything. I mean, there's so much nuance in all this, but I'm trying to just give some basics, some 101 that your listeners hopefully can do right away, really having to go to a training program.
I know. Well, some of them are definitely going to take this away. I can't wait to hear about it. Send us a note to let us know what you pick up from this. Do you want to do any You Might Be in Trouble Ifs, Kim?
Sure. One of the things we like to do here, Evan, is we like to think about things that are the red lights on our dashboard of life. So what are some you might be in trouble if statements that our listeners could use to help identify, maybe I need to re-listen to that episode?
Well, in some ways, that might be a summary from what we're doing. You might be in trouble if you show up misaligned with the HIPPO, right?
Yeah.
You're in big trouble from the get-go. You might be in trouble if you're answering questions that the group can answer for itself. Yeah. You might be in trouble if you're only hearing from the HIPPO, right? And you might be, and I would say will be in trouble if you don't leave time to land. So I'd offer those maybe as summaries that are quick takeaways of the conversation.
Those are great. And if our listeners want to read more about Popra and Area Model and all the other cool things that you're up to, where would they go for that?
They can go to our website, which my best thing, go to my LinkedIn page, and my website's on there, and there's actually 6 Evan Ungers, right? And I'm the year, no one's watching this, but I'll have this same exact shirt, this blue, black check shirt. I'll have let me watch my language, a rather impish grin, and pick that one, right? Don't pick Dr. Unger, right? I pick Evan Unger. And so you can find that information there. If you're interested in giving our program a trial, I'm glad to give your listeners I'll knock over $2,000 off the price of a seat if they're from a new client.
Oh,
welcome
all right.
to reach out to me. And so, yeah, you can find me on my LinkedIn page.
All right. On behalf of our listeners, thanks. And we'll share those links in our show notes for you.
And thank you so much. It was so great to have you on, Evan. We are totally cut from the same dorky meeting facilitation cloth where we're just, you were like, there's so much nuance. I was like, I know there's we could talk for hours about the nuance. So thank you for having such a delightful conversation this afternoon. I would love to ask if you could send us off as we get the next round with a virtual toast.
Yeah. May your project sponsors, who are your HIPPOs, let's think about this, have a more nutritious diet of richer conversation, more collaboration so they make better decisions, so people buy in and they go implement. So may those HIPPOs do well and you help them do well.
Cheers.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to you.
And that's our show. Thanks for listening. If you liked our show, please leave a review and a comment on iTunes or wherever you get our podcast. Your review really does mean a lot. And if you want to check out our membership site and all of our cool content there, you can check that out at pmhappyhour.com/membership. If you want to talk to us directly about project management, PM consulting, training, or whatever, our contact info is on our website under About Your Hosts, or you can just hit us up on our Facebook site at PM Happy Hour. You'll find we're really pretty easy to get a hold of there. And that's it for today. Good luck with your projects, and we hope to catch you again at the next PM Happy Hour. Cheers.